Now you may begin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I now call the April 7th meeting of the Hillsborough Historic District Commission to order. Margaret, could we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Jill Hyman.
Here.
Now you may begin. Thank you. 1 second. I need
Thank
to
you, everyone.
mute
I
something.
now call the April 7th meeting of the
Sometimes I need to mute that and sometimes I don't. So sorry. Virginia Bell, Virginia Smith,
I'm here.
Megan Kimball,
Present.
Will Spoon,
Present.
Eric Altman,
Present.
and Candace Cobb is not yet present, and Max Dowdle is also not present.
But we have a quorum.
We do.
All right. I'm going to share the mission statement of this commission. It is to identify, protect, and preserve Hillsborough's historic architectural resources and to educate the public about those resources and preservation in general. The Hillsborough Historic District represents a visual history of Hillsborough's development from the 1700s to the 1960s. In 1973, the town chose to reflect that history through the passage of the Preservation Ordinance creating the Historic District. Are there any changes to the agenda? I wanted to have a conversation about a steer for our consultants about design standards, how we want to approach some of these things in our new guidelines. Are there other changes?
I don't have any.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll move on to the minutes from the March 3rd meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Please indicate by raising your hand or. Okay, I don't see any. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Virginia.
Mhm.
Second? I'll second. Okay. And we need to do a roll call vote. The first of many. So with that, I'm sorry?
Is that because, never mind, continue.
We have to do the roll call vote because we're in the Zoom forum. So with that, I will, if there's no changes and we have a motion to approve the minutes as prepared. So all in favor, as I call your name, Eric?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. With that, we'll move on to our old business and we'll give Margaret just a chance to let. Okay. I see that Alan has joined our meeting. Is that the only additional participant for this agenda item?
Alan, do you have anybody else here with you? There's other people in the waiting room, but I don't know who they're.
Yes, Megan and Chris Moore. Chris Moore is the buyer. His wife may be on there. I'm not sure who the other people are.
Okay.
Megan's a realtor involved with transaction. We couldn't figure out how to type in without being in the meeting, so.
Okay. So with that, then I want to take the opportunity to swear everyone in before I fail to remember that. So those of you, Alan, since this is old business which we tabled, we do not need to swear you in again. You remain under oath to this commission. But Megan and I'm guessing it's Chris Moore.
Yes.
That we do need to swear in, as well as Margaret, because she'll be preparing a staff report for us. So if you could raise your right hand and state if you promise that all the information you're about to give us this evening is true and factual.
I do.
Megan, I need you to okay, thank you. All right. So with that, this is an application, as the board may remember, for a certificate of appropriateness at 224 North Okonichi Street. The applicant is House Right Building to construct a new 2,555 square foot, 1.5 story single family dwelling with a front porch and a 2-car side entry garage. And as you call, we tabled this at the last meeting. So I need a motion to open the public hearing, please.
My notes actually say that the hearing was left
Oh,
open at the last hearing,
that's
so
right. Sorry.
we can just go right. I just want to double check that someone's not expecting someone with the name Arden to be here to represent this application. That's with another application.
Me.
Okay, we'll catch them later. Thank you.
Hey, Jill,
Yes.
before we go forward, I just want to mention that, so I've never met Megan myself. Hi, Megan. But my husband Blake works with her. And so she wasn't present, we didn't know she was involved when we opened the hearing last meeting. So I haven't had a chance to think about it. I don't think I would be conflicted, but I don't want to have the appearance of a conflict. So I don't really know what to do.
So we have our attorney with us, Mr. Herman. I'll ask you, I think in the past, the guidance has been for the individual to state whether they can be free of bias in the application.
That's exactly right. I mean, I personally don't think there would be a conflict of interest, but just the fact of disclosing it and that you'd otherwise be impartial and non-biased, just stating that on the record would be suffice in this case.
Okay, great. And everybody else feels comfortable with that. Just to give you some background, my husband is a he's not anymore, but he used to work as a real estate agent at the same firm as Megan, and Megan is a wonderful mentor to him. But they don't, that he's taken a new job, so they don't really work together anymore.
And that's actually where we are in the order of events here. So we need to ask if there are any known or potential conflicts of interest. And I think we've heard that Megan feels she can be impartial. Are there any concerns by members of the commission?
Well, I should tell you that Megan is a friend of mine, but I don't think that's going to cause a conflict for me.
Okay. Okay. So we have 2 disclosures.
I don't think I've ever met her.
Seems very popular.
You have now.
Oh, yeah, it's really nice to meet you.
Hey, Megan.
Okay. So I'm going to ask if all members of the commission are familiar with this application. I'm asking that again because there have been changes to the submission. So if for any reason you feel you are not familiar with the application as submitted for review this evening, would you please indicate by raising your hand? Okay, all members indicate their familiarity with it. So with that, I would like to ask Margaret to give us the staff report, and you may want to abbreviate it a bit. I know a couple of these are quite long.
Yes, and so basically this is a continuation from last month's application, and my understanding is that the guidance the commission provided to the applicant was that there were concerns around the 2 board and batten gables on the front elevation, and then there were 7 numbered items that they requested to have changed in the application, and I believe nearly all of that material has been provided. Generally, we're looking at a new home construction to be designed in the modern farmhouse style, 1.5 stories visible from Okonichi Street, approximately in the center of the lot. The home is 70 feet wide with an overall height of 29 feet. Combination of hardy board sidings, both vertical and horizontal, to be in gray and white. The roof would be an architectural series shingle. The front porch, mudroom, and garage shed roofed elements would be corrugated standing seams, 16-inch wide panels in gray. And the changes, if folks are okay, I can share my screen and show the previous and post elevations. I put them on one slide in hopes of.
Yeah, we'll want to start through that in just a minute as we go.
That's true. We can wait. We can wait for that. And the applicable guidelines are new construction of primary buildings, construction of outbuildings and garages, fences and walls, site features and plantings, walkways and driveways, off-street parking, exterior lighting, and paint and exterior color. There were not any written submitted comments from any of the neighbors, and no one else requested access to the meeting.
All right, thank you, Margaret. All right, with that, I'll ask the applicants if they want to add anything to what has been submitted or what Margaret has shared with the board.
I would just say that, to the best of my knowledge, we addressed all of the items that were specifically requested. In fact, we went beyond that and eliminated both of the secondary doors on the front elevation so that there is only a single door on the front, eliminating the concern of the side doors. The only other change, and this was specific to the buyers, was that we changed the garage door from 2 8-foot doors to a single 16-foot door. It's still side entry. This was just a request that they made. And so we submitted that change along with everything else we did.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, we'll ask you as we go through the elevations in just a minute to call out the changes that were made before and after to be sure we've seen all of those. All right, then. So we don't have any further commentary from neighbors or whatever. So with that, I'll open this application up for questions from the board. And Margaret, it might be good if you start us out with the elevations. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if we could just look at the elevations to understand the changes, that would be really helpful for me.
He's got that done here. Oh, Margaret, you went above and beyond. Thank you very much.
Well, it was as somebody who wasn't at your last meeting and didn't see these changes, clearly I missed one because Alan just said that this door has also changed to a window. So what is on the March side, the smaller pictures are the original application, and then on the right-hand side are the changes. So there should also be a circle around this window. There's the door change, and I'll come back to the front in a minute, but I just want to show the others. No changes on the rear elevation, and the requested window changes in the bathroom on the back. Really the only thing I didn't find, and it may be that I did not spend enough time looking through the material, was the fence around the HVAC units. I assume that a wood privacy fence is fairly simple and maybe well enough described in the narrative to not necessarily need a drawing, but that's the only thing that I didn't immediately jump out at me, and we can certainly talk about that.
Okay.
Are you referring to the fence around the HVAC units?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was under the impression that there was a sort of a established standard for that, and that we agreed to abide by whatever the standard is. I think Justin said it needed to be minimally 4 feet high of, wood type construction. But other than that, I wasn't aware of any other submittal requirements.
No, it's just that we frequently see that drawn on a site plan, and Margaret's just making the observation that change is not shown on anything we've resubmitted, but yes, we agree you have committed to that in the narrative. So let's just start with the front elevation here. The one, and Alan, let me just ask you, Margaret's already acknowledged that the door, as we're facing these elevations to the left of this double doors, which are the front door, has been changed to a window, and she didn't catch that.
Yes.
Is there anything else here on this front elevation that has been revised that you need to call out for us?
No.
So I think we've simplified some of the gables on the front, and we've simplified the windows, the doors to windows here.
Yeah, those
Are there any-
doors look great, or the windows replacing the doors. That well done.
I just can't see all the commissioners at once. So do any other commissioners have a question on this elevation before we move on to the south elevation, I believe?
I don't really have a question, just to note that I think one of the concerns that was raised, if I'm understanding our conversation right, was that there were just a lot of different planes, if that's the right way to describe it, to the home. So the front elevation had 7 different, it sort of was corrugated. So there were 7 different like depths.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to highlight in this next elevation, because you can see to the left of the now single garage door, those protrusions of the gable fronts and the other, each of those gabled fronts is indicated there as Margaret's little hand is going back and forth.
Yeah. So that I was just wanting to note that hasn't changed. That comment wasn't addressed.
I think if you look at the floor plan, you will see that really there's not 7 different planes, that most of them somewhat line up. There is some interplay, but Chris and I talked about possible changes. We looked at 4 or 5 different scenarios for this front, and Chris and his wife really liked the original submittal. We did the best we could to satisfy the concerns with the gables. I'm not sure what the issue is with different planes necessarily, because that really, at least in my mind, doesn't change the massing. It actually adds some interest with shadowing and shades, and in my opinion, makes it a little more interesting.
I think it was for me, it was compounded with the multiple doors on the front that contributed to the multi-family nature of the facade.
Yeah, the busyness.
And I think, changing 2 of those doors to now windows. There was some discussion about, not bumping out that gable nearest the south end of the house, which does just protrude minimally. But I don't think that's, I don't know, Megan, how you're feeling about it, but I think that for me, the concern regarding that crenellation, if we want to call it that, has been mostly addressed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you look at the guidelines, just to tie it back to that conversation, the removal of the doors addresses the concern that we had. So the number of planes, isn't really as big of an issue.
Yeah, and I didn't find a guideline that concerned that.
I thought we had discussed.
Could I make a comment? So I'm the buyer. So my name's Chris Moore. I lived for 15 years in Hillsborough and then another 10 years at UNC. So I'm very, very aware of Hillsborough and the culture there. And I just wanted to add that I agree with everything you guys, all the changes that you made last month. I think it was some really good ideas. I agree with changing the 2 doors. It didn't make a lot of sense to me to have the 3 doors there. So I think the way it looks now is much better. And I also liked that Alan removed the gable, the top gable. I think that top portion, that kind of more rectangular look at the top, gives it a little bit more of a farmhouse type feel than it was before. So I just wanted to say thank you. I think all of your ideas, in my opinion, were justified. I think it's a much nicer and prettier home now, and I think it does fit. It's more in line with everything else that I'm seeing there in Hillsborough, at least like the new construction.
All right, and I thank you for those comments, Mr. Moore. I do want to clarify that they were based out of our application of our guidelines and trying to adhere to the special character of the district rather than an aesthetic driver. But I'm glad that you feel that the
I watched
as well as the aesthetics have been are satisfactory to you. So we're great.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying I agreed with your changes. I watched the original meeting, and I know that you were adhering to the guidelines, and I appreciate that. And I think it makes sense what changes you made, and I think we've made those changes. I think in terms of the corrugation of the house, I think we don't want to build a box. We don't want a flat face. That's not the type of house that we're trying to put there, and I'm not sure that wouldn't detract actually from the other homes that are on that street as well. But again, like I said, I just wanted to point out that I appreciate the changes you made, and I agree with them.
Okay, well, thank you. So I just want to come back to these garage doors. Are there any comments from the commissioners or concerns about this change from a double door to a single door? It's the same material in the door, is my understanding of the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct, Mr. Knight?
Yes, it's the same door make and style that my understanding has been pre-approved in the district, or at least it's the recommended door.
It's
so that has not changed.
Approved for new construction, so we
Yes.
don't have a recommended door, but yes. Okay. All right.
Jill, I had a question about the front elevation that I didn't get a chance to throw out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, Mark.
I thought we had discussed reducing the amount of board and batten to just one segment instead of two, to make it less of that multifamily dwelling look. Which you guys remember that, or?
I don't recall seeing that in the minutes, nor do I recall that. I think, do you feel that there's some concern with the guidelines and the use of the board and batten here?
Not that I can cite at the moment, so therefore I will just let it rest.
With that, let me move on. Help me. I don't claim to have photographic memory on those minutes. So if there's anyone else that remembers that conversation we need to discuss, please indicate that now.
Hey Jill, while we're going around the circle, let me just speak to this elevation real quick. Chris, Alan, thanks for working with us on this. And I think the simplification of the roof line and the doors to windows addressed the issue I saw with the plane changes and recesses. So I think these elevations are appropriate now, but thank you for working with us on it.
Sure.
Okay. No further changes on this south elevation, Alan, other than what Margaret has already indicated.
Right.
So let's move on to the rear elevation. We didn't have any changes here, correct, Alan?
No changes on the rear elevation, no.
Right. And then
other than the simplification of the roof,
from
the front, yeah.
Well, actually, this gable here is missing too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So now it's essentially a side to side gable. It's a simpler roof system.
Okay.
So that's reflected in that rear elevation.
Yes. Thank you. And with that, I'll move on to, I'm checking for any commissioners that are raising their hands. Let me move on to the north elevation here. Again, Mr. Knight and Mr. Moore have revised this elevation, which is visible from Queen Street, to reflect some of the discussions that we had last meeting in March. I believe these are, per the discussions, I believe that's correctly reflected in this elevation. I'd like to ask if the commissioners have any questions or further comments. No, I don't see any. So with that, I think then I think there is some, I don't hear anything further that we need to discuss. Is that correct, commissioners, with respect to this application? Max, I know you've joined us. I don't know when. I'm sorry, but is there anything that you need to ask about?
Good, thank you.
Okay. Then with that, are we ready to close the public hearing? I'm sorry, I cannot read this guideline that Justin pushes for me. So with that, are we ready to close the public hearing? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Megan. I need to do a roll call vote. For those of you who are just joining us, because we participate in Zoom, our requirement is that each and every vote be a roll call. So with that, all in favor of closing the public hearing, Will?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Max?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. The motion carries 6-0. Does the board need any further deliberation? That's only closing the public hearing, Megan. So is there a need for any further deliberation with respect to this application? Virginia, are you getting
No.
ready? No? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
You my Hollywood Square lit up. Okay, then can I have a motion for a finding of fact? And Margaret, I believe we would need to be correct, we would list these changes that we enumerated in the last meeting as well.
That would be best, yes.
Okay. Does anyone want to make an attempt to do that, or would you like me to
I
start?
can attempt it. Are the changes, those are the ones listed in the staff report?
Right.
Okay, and then from this,
And I think it's the application as revised and submitted this evening that we're finding the fact on.
okay. So I move that we find as a fact that the House Right Building Company application is in keeping with the overall character. Well, wait, should I go backwards? So I move that we find as a fact that the House Right Building Company application as modified is in keeping with the overall character of the historic district and complies with all the relevant standards of evaluation based on our discussion of the application and the standards of evaluation in section 3.12.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance, because the plans are consistent with design guidelines. New construction of primary buildings, new construction of outbuildings and garages, fences and walls, site features and plantings, walkways, driveways, and off-street parking, exterior lighting, paint, and exterior color.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Virginia. Any further discussion? No? All right then, a roll call vote, please. All in favor of this finding of fact? Will? Will, aye? Okay. Eric?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Max, are you there with us? I've lost Max. Megan,
Aye.
Jill, I. Margaret, do we have, is he trying to get in or should we wait?
I'm not seeing him just yet.
Okay. I believe we can, with a quorum, we can go forward and just note Max's absence.
Here he is.
Yes.
I agree. I'm having connectivity issues.
Okay,
No.
we understand. So you agreed with the finding of fact, Max. Thank you. All right then, Megan, would you like to continue? That motion carries 6-0. I'm sorry.
Sure. I move to approve the application as submitted or as modified with the following conditions. First, the applicant will install wood privacy screening around the HVAC units. And provide, so I guess we have to pause for a second. So in the staff report, it said that the applicant was asked to provide a picture of the proposed fence type and material in the materials list. So I suppose our condition could be that he works with Justin on an approved fence.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Work with staff for that fence.
Yeah, okay. And the applicant will work with staff on the fence type and materials. Number 2, what did the applicant provide the landscaping plan?
No, there's no landscaping plan. We did agree to mitigate the tree removal by planting, I think, some replacement streetscape trees. Yeah, hardwoods.
Well, what we've asked you to do as a condition, Alan, as was summarized in the staff report, is to provide a plan to staff that shows where that one hardwood tree would be replanted to offset the loss.
So
the
condition could be that you'll work with staff on that. Okay. Number 3,
I don't think we have to go through that one if the revised elevation reflects that.
Okay, so I guess the third condition is that the elevations will be revised as the elevations that are approved are the revised elevations that were submitted in this meeting.
Yes.
Number 4, the garage door will have a pebble grain and not a wood grain and will not have any windows. Number 5, all windows will have clear glass. 6, I
think it's like
no exterior lighting is proposed other than recessed metal can lights over the front porch. And the applicant will provide a picture and spec sheet of the can lights to staff for approval. I think that's it. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add.
I would agree. Is it clear to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, so there are a number of things that you need to provide to staff to complete the dot the I's and cross the T's of this application?
Yeah, I provided a cut sheet for the recessed cans. I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, I saw that. It was in the packet.
Okay, I thought it was. So,
Okay.
yes.
So then that condition could just be that the recessed can light will be as submitted.
Right. Okay.
Right. Is there a second? I'll second. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. We have a roll call vote. All in favor of this motion to approve this application as modified and those modifications is delineated in the motion. Please indicate by saying aye when I call your name. Megan,
Aye.
Virginia,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
sorry. I have to hear you and sometimes I don't catch you. Will?
Aye.
Megan?
Oh, I already said aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, Max?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Okay, the motion carries 6-0. Congratulations on the changes. And I just want to emphasize, I want to wish you all the good luck you need with this project and the best of luck with this. And I just want to emphasize that if anything is to change from what we've discussed tonight, you need to work with staff and they will
Right.
provide guidance as to whether that's something that they can approve or whether you need to return to this board. But we're expecting the house to look like we saw it tonight.
I understand.
Okay.
This is good. This is going to be one of the coolest blocks in the historic district when this is done.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving to the next application. Give people a chance to come in. See Mr. Axelbank. Can you hear us, Mr. There he is. Hello, welcome.
Good evening.
Hi, Artie.
Hello.
So,
Nice to see you all again.
and you. All right, then, let me introduce this application then. This
Jill,
is,
sorry, I need to make a motion to recuse myself from this one, please.
all right, we're gonna get there, but we'll
Oh, sorry.
go ahead and take care of that now.
Yeah.
Max is identifying a conflict of interest with this application as requesting to be recused. Do we need to do a verbal motion on that? Okay, so I move that we recuse Max Dowdle from this application. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I missed who that was. Eric, thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call vote on that then, please? All in favor of recusing Max from this application, indicate by speaking aye when I call your name. Will?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Max? Virginia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Max. Okay, so this is a certificate of appropriateness for an after-the-fact application at 330 West King Street. Mr. Axelbank is requesting an after-the-fact approval to remove a double wood door from the front elevation with replacement with, this is the original one, smooth hardy siding, to remove the previously installed replacement windows and to replace the original double door over the top of the previously installed smooth hardy plank siding. Is that correct? Mr.
So
Axelbank?
I think that was a blend of the original. I think this represents our new request for a new COA. Which
Right,
is,
and so you're going to remove the windows and install the doors over the half wall of exterior siding. Is that correct?
we did not propose to remove the windows. We were proposing to place the door over the windows that are there right now.
Okay, I was confused on that with the application myself. So it's not, all right. So let's go back through that one more time. It's a request to replace the doors over the previously replaced windows and exterior siding on the facade of this house.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the word is replace. I don't know how to separate that from the word replace. We're going to reposition or re-put the doors, replace the doors. That's what I'm proposing.
All right. Thank you very much for those
So-
clarifications. So, and we have indicated, so Max has indicated he needs to be recused. Is there any other commissioner with a known or potential conflict of interest or bias in this application? Please indicate by raising your hand now. No other commissioner has indicated as such. Are all commissioners familiar with this application? All have indicated that they are. So with that, Mr. Axelbank, I need to swear you in. Would you raise your right hand? And do you promise that the information that you're about to give us this evening is true and factual?
I do.
Thank you very much. Margaret, with that, can you give us a staff report?
Yes. So in the staff report, Justin reiterated kind of the whole history of how we got here. I think I can step over some of that this evening. The building is a 2-story AAA roofed house that had these windows over the front entrance, or doors over the front entrance that have been replaced with windows and siding. That property owner is asking to reinstall those doors, the original doors, back in that place. And the relevant guidelines would be exterior walls and windows and doors for this application. And just Justin indicated a number of different guidelines that I can go through if folks would like me to. For exterior walls, it was 1, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10 in your guidelines. And then for windows and doors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. The staff recommendation is actually denial of this request based on the reference guidelines, and staff recommends that the only amiable solution is to cut the original opening back into the wall and to replace the existing doors in a relationship traditional to the doors in the district, whether they be operable or fixed. The applicant then may do any needed weatherproofing or sealing around the doors to prevent leakage, which has been a concern noted throughout. I can go into more detail as the board wishes, but I think folks are very familiar with this application. Maybe it's just that I was at the last meeting when Dr. Axelbank was here, so maybe it just seems a little bit more familiar to me, but it boils down to installing the doors over the windows and siding creates a faux feature or a false sense of an opening where there isn't necessarily one. So.
Okay. Mr. Axelbank, this is an opportunity for you to clarify or articulate anything you would like for us to know about this application. So
Thank you. I would like to. Yeah, and Ms. Houth, can you just state the last, and Mr. Axelbank is fine. I appreciate the doctor, but I'm not here as a doctor. I'm here as a homeowner and a neighbor. Yeah, no problem. And just the last part, I guess one of the things is I was not privy to the staff report, although I did speak with Justin several times. I'm sorry he's not here, but he's been very patient with me and helping me sort of see what I need to do. Can you just repeat the last part of it again, which is what the staff recommendation was?
Sure. Again, I'm reading from a document Justin prepared that the staff recommends denial of the request based on the reference guidelines, of which there's about a dozen. Furthermore, the staff recommends that the only amiable solution is to cut the original opening back into the wall to replace the existing doors in a relationship traditional to doors in the district, whether they be operable or fixed, and that the applicant may then do any needed weatherproofing or sealing around the doors to prevent leaks, whether it be air or water.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and thank you, Ms. Howman. I was going to go back over some of the history, but I probably don't need to do that. Sounds like the commission has gotten that. But you know, we appeared before the HDC last spring requesting a COA for a change in the front of the house. It was denied. We actually appealed, which I don't know if the commission knows that. We appealed to the Board of Adjustment and the appeal was denied as well. So we're back now. We were directed to apply again for a COA, which would hopefully meet the expressed relevant guidelines. So I'm here by doing that today. I just want to remind the commission that the reason the doors had to be removed was due to a long-term leak over years. That was in spite of 2 major repairs and 1 roof repair, continued to cause damage to the underside of our porch roof and including more destructive and more problematic damage the inside of our house, including the woodwork and the sheetrock. That was the reason that we had to do remove the doors to begin with. So I'm here today with an update, which is we retrieved the original doors. When I last met with the commission, we said the doors were not retrievable because our contractor had taken them away, but we retrieved the original doors and we're proposing to affix them neatly and authentically to the outside wall of the house in the same position that they were originally. And basically this, this would, I believe, satisfy meet the guidelines and hopefully meet the commission's concerns. We understood from the last meeting that it's okay to have doors that were fixed and not functional. I think that was not in contention, but in this case, the doors would be fixed. The materials are the same. In fact, it's the exact identical materials. It would preserve the appearance and preserve what was important to us, the waterproofing above our porch roof and the front entrance of our home, which was definitely damaged. We have waited to do that repair because we were waiting for the Historic District Commission to give us a ruling that would allow us to go forward and finish the repair that was necessary. And I'll just say, and then I would be happy to sort of entertain questions. The doors are 1 1/4 inch thick. I measured them yesterday. And so if they are placed on the outside wall, they will not be protruding in a way that is obvious and will basically have the same appearance that they had when we removed them the first time. And I'm hoping the commission will see that as a reasonable solution. I'm disappointed to hear that Justin said the only way to do this properly is to cut a hole back in the wall and put the doors back. And then after that, see to the waterproofing, which seems to be sort of backwards and not helpful in terms of having to sort of redo the waterproofing, which was really the reason for the repair.
Thank you. Margaret, do we have any public comment for or against this application?
No, we didn't receive any requests to participate or any written comments. Thank you.
Okay, with that, then I'll open this application up for comments or questions from the commission members. Is there anyone that would like to begin? Well, I can start. I think I want to kind of clarify Dr. Axelbank. So my apologies. I'll make sure I get your title correct this time. I'm sorry.
No, I asked for Mr. I asked for
okay,
Mr.
I know you did, but I certainly, maybe I should just call you Arthur. Would that help?
That'd be great.
Okay.
That's what Virginia will do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think that the staff recommendation is looking at the guidelines again, and I don't know that putting the doors back in place and then doing the waterproofing. I don't think the order is really the issue here as to how this work, the order which this work is done. The question before us is, does your proposal, as you've come before us tonight, satisfy the guidelines for windows and doors and exterior walls? And that was the conversation I think we had the first time you were before us, and I'm delighted that you were able to retrieve the original doors. But I remain concerned that applying them, I don't know a good word, instead of replace, but applying them to the exterior of replacement windows and wall that you have there now meets the guidelines. I don't see how that does. And that's my concern. And I'm interested in what other commissioners think about. And I would go through there's a number of guidelines there that we have for windows and doors, specifically number 5, which is replace in kind any portion of a window or door that is damaged, match the original, retain as much of the original fabric as possible, and only substitute compatible materials for the original only if it's not technically feasible to do so. Number 7, which is a really key one for me, it's not appropriate to compromise the architectural integrity of the building by introducing or eliminating historic window or door openings on character-defining elevations. And then I think number 9, for windows and doors, which it's not appropriate to create a false sense of historical development by making changes to windows or doors, such as adding a conjectural feature based on insufficient historical, pictorial, or physical documentation. This board does not concern itself with whether these doors are operable or not, but we do have to concern ourselves with how these doors are installed on the facade of the house. I think that's where I'm struggling. So I'll pause to allow other commissioners to ask questions or make comments.
I have a few comments. First of all, these are the original doors, right?
Right.
So he's not messing around with, fake antique doors. So that's good. But the thing is, it's not a false sense of historical development if he's putting the original doors back up there. Granted, they won't be functioning as doors, but I don't think they were functioning as doors, at least in the 30-some years that the Axelbanks have lived there. And I don't know how they were used before that. So just an observation or two there.
I don't understand. I mean, a door sits in the plane of a wall. It doesn't sit in front of the plane of the wall, and the siding comes to molding, which surrounds a door, which here, that's all 1.25 inches off, as I understand it. So that's part of my concern. I really love that they're the original doors. That's great.
I agree with both Virginia and Jill's comments. I don't think that the guideline of creating a false sense of historical, whatever the language is, I lost it, that last guideline, I don't think that's applicable here for the reasons that Virginia said, because he really is restoring the original doors in the same exact place. And, we're not concerned with whether or not they open. In my mind, there are 2 issues. The first is the one that Jill mentioned, which is how it'll actually look on the building, whether or not it will look like a door slapped on top of siding, and not feel right. I don't know does this door have a handle? I just was like trying to imagine what it would look like. And it just seems normally like Jill said, a door is in a door frame, and the handle, would sort of be in that door frame. It would all sort of be within the same plane of the house. And it seems like the way it'll look is sort of, it'll be sort of poking out on top of the siding. I don't know if you can speak to that, Arthur, where the door handle will be.
Sure. So on the doors, it's interesting that there's just a doorknob on the inside, and there are 2 doors, and there's a lip that overlaps. And I was thinking one of the things maybe the HDC should start doing is making more site visits, and I can bring you out to our shed and take a look, and then you can climb up on our porch roof. and mostly look at our front entrance, which has peeling woodwork from the leak. But that's more traumatic for us. That does not impact us. We've dried it in, but the question is, are we going to have to reopen it so that it would be a leak again? So, but anyway, there's no doorknob on the outside. There was only doorknobs on the inside, and there's a little overlapping lip of the 2 doors. And Yeah, to that point, I guess in the plane of the building versus 1¼ inches. Justin and I talked about how much you can actually see from King Street. And
Yeah, really.
if your eyesight is good, I guess you can see more.
So that should be minimal, it sounds like.
That's what I'm suggesting. Yes.
Okay. Well, then
If it were trimmed out also, it would look completely like, yeah, I imagine.
But then you're
Like
putting a
proper
double layer
doors.
of trim around those windows. Is that your proposal, Mr. Axelbank?
What was the question? I didn't understand. I'm
So
sorry.
are you going to trim this door out?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I've
So
had
there'll be a second layer of trim around the upper 3 sides of the window. You already have.
That's right. That's
and
right.
You'll be putting another layer of trim on top of that.
That's right.
Yeah, I think my concern about the false sense of historical development is this is not how doors are built on character defining elevations of historic homes. This is just not the way we have them. And I certainly respect the fact that you had a leak. I'm sure that the doors could be reinstalled and a leak prevented, perhaps with the work you've done, perhaps with other ammunition, but I certainly don't want to expose you to a leak again. It's just that we all have doors and doors don't necessarily leak. So that's my concern, just to address the comments from the other commissioners.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
So the second thing that I would say that I'm concerned about in terms of the guidelines is if just installing a door on top of a window and siding and what that could potentially do to the integrity of the home. If, it sounds like this is sort of a leaky area and there's moisture. What happens if moisture gets between the door and the siding and the window? I could imagine there would be a lot of potential for issues there that could rot out the door or rot out the siding. It just doesn't seem like a best practice.
Which doesn't?
Laying a door, like a wood door, on top of siding and a window. It seems like there's just opportunity for moisture to get in, and especially since you've talked about issues with moisture in that particular area of the house, problems with waterproofing, and which would lead to maintenance or deterioration, which what happens if those doors rot out and you have to, because they were installed in that way, and you ultimately have to remove them, then I guess we would lose that feature of the home.
Are there other thoughts or comments from commissioners? Questions?
Phil, it's Will. I share the staff interpretation of the guidelines and think the appropriate remedy is the one they suggested for the reasons they cited.
Meaning to cut a hole and put the doors back in as without a wall between them and the inside of the house.
That's right, just the way Justin recommended in the staff report.
I think that, this is an after the fact application. So part of the conversation you're hearing, Arthur, is that the original changes weren't made consistent with the guidelines. And we're trying to evaluate whether this change brings it consistent with the guidelines. But
and Jill, I could give a little more my personal view, but this is a major through town street. It's a very distinctive feature on a very distinctive house in a very distinctive part of the town. And for me, it's a loss. And to see that go away, we treat all houses in the district equally, but this is a kind of a showpiece in the town, and it's a really distinctive feature you don't see very often. Maybe because it's leaky. I mean, hate to make a joke, but it seems like an important thing you don't see very often in the town. And I'd really like to get it looking the way it did before all this happened. However, can be done.
Well, just to let y'all know, since I live in such a very old house, the builders in the past 250 years were not always so great. You would not believe what I have found between the walls of my house. So, and this is not a comment on the guidelines, it's just a little bit of perspective. Just because it was built, say 120 years ago for this house, does not mean it was built well. So if they try to put it back like it was, who knows what will happen. Hopefully there'll be a much better builder today.
Well, one can take advantage, I guess, of newer things. Yeah, as we would with any renovation of any property, repairs and replacements. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I want to hear from the commissioners, of course.
Yes. Are there any other comments? Thoughts? Okay, please go ahead, Arthur.
Well, yeah, and I really appreciate the first name, Jill. Thank you very much. It's much better since we're neighbors. Yeah, I guess the comment that you guys are certain that it can be reinstalled without a leak. I don't have that certainty. And doors, of course, are face the outdoors. But I wonder how many doors that are on the second story. I was thinking because I just, on my morning jog, I went by a house on Orange Street and I saw that there were doors on the upper level. And I wondered how those worked and what happened with that. And so, I really regret that the commission doesn't see the risk for us of trying to install these doors as they were and try to waterproof beneath them, regardless if they're fixed or operable. And the fact that they'd be framed in and they would be 1¼ inch or whatever it is, or 1½ inches, sticking out, just seems to me, is I guess what I'd ask, and this may be a question for your future meetings, is what's important the appearance, or is it important to have the functionality that the doors were originally in the same plane as the siding, and therefore they should remain in the same plane as the siding? Or is it more the appearance as you walk by and what that does to I certainly am in favor of our historic look. Like I get that, that's part of why I live here. But it just seems to me to be maybe chasing a horse that is not worth not just the effort. And I know we're not to talk about the funds. It's much more about the permanency and the ability to keep the thing from leaking going forward.
Can I ask Arthur a question? Do you have anything to say on the point that I raised my concern about the door being on top of the siding and the window, and what that might, how do you plan to achieve that? And
right. Well, yeah. And I had my builder up there, my contractor up there, and looking at it, and he said, "Oh yeah, we can frame this in, and we can make it look like it was." Quote. I understand that it's not exactly in the same plane, but if that's when you're standing right up close to it. But to me, it just seems to me this is a reasonable solution, frankly, which allows the homeowner to do something that's important for the safety and the water damage. And granted, it's not like it was 100 years ago, if it was like that, and none of us were alive then. But it just seems to me to be the right, and I don't want to use the word compromise because I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's just a reasonable solution to have this done so that we don't have a leak in our porch and our front entrance, and have the door still present so that it has the appearance, for you guys to ask yourselves, is it the appearance or is it something else you're striving for?
So my question is more to do with once, imagine that the door is installed on top of the window in the siding. What will you do to maintain it so that it doesn't deteriorate the siding, or it doesn't compromise the integrity of the siding or the doors? Like if moisture gets, we know that moisture gets in there, it sounds like leaks are a problem there. I know that when wood is up against wood and moisture gets in there, you can have rot and mold. And so how are you going to maintain that? Or, or what would you do to keep moisture out? I guess I haven't heard anything on that.
Well, we would install it correctly so that it's sealed properly. And B, we would take care of it like we take care of any other part of our house with the windows, et cetera, in terms of, keep the upkeep and inspecting it and waterproofing and caulking it and repainting it or sealing it as needed.
Hey, Arthur, will the old doors you're talking about placing again in the old position over the new windows? Will the windows be the same width and height? Or are you going to see through the original door a combination of glass and siding?
We would see through glass and glass. The dimensions are the same. The windows we put in are the same dimensions. And so if we put the doors back, they're just going to fit. We've been up there measuring.
Okay, thanks.
For what it's worth, I think this is considering everything that's gone through, I think this is a pretty elegant solution. I like that you kept the original doors, and it seems like it would be rather seamless looking in from the street. Even, unless there's something, unless that siding's really popping out, which it doesn't sound like it is.
Well, I agree, Eric. That was my first thought when I read the idea and, of how to fix it.
So are there other comments from the commissioners or the applicant? Do we need more information, or are we ready to close the public hearing? I think we may have a mixture of opinions here. That's fine. I need to ask if there's any more information needed for someone to make their decision, for anyone to make their decision. Okay. Then I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Eric. This is a vote on the motion to close the public hearing by roll call. All in favor, Megan?
Aye.
Not Max. Will?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. So then I need a motion for a finding of fact.
Should we have some discussion to see where the commission stands so we could figure out the finding of fact?
We can do the finding of fact either way, and individuals can vote as their conscience dictates. It looks to me like from the consensus I'm seeing, it looks like there's a couple people that are comfortable with this solution. There may be a couple people who are not comfortable with this solution, and one unclear. So is there further conversation? Is anyone further conversation amongst the commissioners regarding the application? I think it's a difficult decision.
Yeah, and from my perspective, he's restoring the doors to their original place after he removed them in violation of the guidelines. And I think he's made every effort to come up with a solution that works, not, not just in terms of the guidelines, but, makes it feasible for him to do it. And I think that so long as the doors are maintained, that it is in keeping with the guidelines.
If I may add, I also think it's important what Arthur mentioned kind of offhand just a little earlier, that it seems to also be protecting other sections of the house from further damage, like underneath where the door was. And I find that another positive for this idea.
Understood. I do think the doors could be reinstalled in their original site, in their original way, with superlative craftsmanship today that would prevent any further damage and deterioration to the home, and that would meet the guidelines that were not met originally with because of the after fact removal of the application, in which the exterior wall and the doors were changed to a window and a wall. So I remain concerned about that.
I guess there's sort of like two ways to look at what we're doing right now, and maybe we could get clarity on that. I mean, there's one way to look at it is we're looking at what was done. He intended to replace those doors, and so if we look at the guidelines, then he had to replace in kind, and all the guidelines speak to that. But then another way to look at it is, well, we're reviewing the action to remedy what has already been done. In which case, replacing in kind and those guidelines don't really speak to this.
Don't have guidelines to address this kind of action.
Right.
So we're outside the guidelines.
Well, I mean, I think you default to what you do have, which is the guidelines for if you got advanced approval to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, otherwise everyone would just do this and get outside the guidelines.
Right. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, then the only way to go would be to require him to take the windows out and put the doors in.
And we know, as the commission, we have to make these interpretations, given the guidelines as they are written today. Is there anything that we've said here, Mr. Herman, that you would counsel us?
I mean, only thing I'll add is you guys are pinpointing the tough issue here. I mean, it's ultimately y'all's call whether to approve or deny according to the guidelines. And unfortunately, I can't steer you in one way or the other. That's you guys' judgment call. But I think you guys have done a good job articulating, the real issue here. And, it's never a bad thing if there's a split vote too. You can't always vote unanimously. So I'll sort of leave it at that as well.
So let me check again. Would further discussion be appreciated by the commissioners, or are we ready to move to a finding of fact?
Well, Jill, I guess maybe to take a guess what Megan's getting at is, do you do the finding of fact since you're the chair and it's your opinion that it's not, and then the people think it is, so against it that way, or do you do it? Because you have to go one way or the other, right?
Right. So someone would make a motion for a finding of fact to either approve it, and those who don't believe it should be approved will vote nay, or they will vote to deny it, and those who think that it should be approved will vote nay.
So I guess we get where we get regardless of
that's right. So that we don't, it doesn't have to be a positive, the vote will still be the vote for what the applicant, with respect to the application. And I think we have individuals that we have 5 of us, and there's people who feel both ways. We don't really have overall consensus at this point. So what I'm seeking to understand now is, will we benefit from further discussion, or do we all feel we have enough information and we can move to a motion?
I have just a quick question. Our guidelines, as far as I know, don't address what to do with an after the fact application. Is that right?
That's right.
If I could just comment, and I know I'm in your hands, of course. I understood that the after the fact status was not being taken into consideration, and we have already apologized more than once for that, only that we felt we were desperate in terms of the water damage, that we had to make a move. And once that happened and it was called to our attention that we needed to come to the HDC, we never hesitated to come forward and be transparent in what we were doing. So I guess I would hope that the commission would not go back and say, well, you're after the fact. And I know that Jill in particular said she doesn't like the after the fact, but not that she was discriminatory, just that she felt like it was very difficult once people had put some resources into it. Like,
Yes.
I understood that. So I just wanted to remind you that at least I understood that the after the fact status could not be undone, but that we had done what any normal family would do, which is to move quickly to fix our water, stop our water damage. And so we regret that it became after the fact, and we paid our fine, and we've been here in good faith to try to get the right, to reach a meeting of the minds. So I'll just, put it that way, Megan. I guess I would hope you would not discriminate because we're after the fact. It was not malicious or done in any way to try to sneak around. And I do worry, I'm a neighbor, as I've said already, that people sort of think, oh, they can do it after the fact, and then they come back and it's an easier road. I would hope that's not the case. It's certainly not the case for me, because I do take this seriously, as my presence here, I hope, demonstrates.
It certainly
No.
does. Arthur, I think was a process question on Megan.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. It was more that I was wondering what level of discretion I have, because if the guidelines spoke on directly to this point on after the fact applications, and said I had to, imagine that we were, in the that we're looking at as if you were asking for permission before the fact, then my hands would be tied.
Yes.
But here it seems like I have more discretion. So
Thank you.
That's good for you.
Asking permission instead of asking forgiveness. Like, I understand that. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So are we ready to make a motion for a finding of fact? And does someone want to do that? I'm happy to. And then, all right. And I want to emphasize, to your point, we don't, while we don't have any guidance in our guidelines about how to handle after the fact applications, and we certainly don't intend to penalize individuals or be punitive in any way regarding that, we are still struck with our trying to evaluate the application with the guidelines as we have them before us. So I'll make a motion. I move that we find as a fact that the Axel Bank application is not in keeping with the overall character of the historic district and does not comply with the relevant standards of evaluation based on our discussion of the application and the standards of evaluation in section 3.12.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance, because the plans are not consistent with design guidelines, exterior walls, and windows and doors. And I would cite for, I guess I should cite the guidelines for exterior walls. I would cite design guidelines. Hold on a second. 7. And for windows and doors, design guidelines 5, 7, and 9. Is there a second?
I saw Will move his lips.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Sorry, second.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. This is a vote to deny the application. Is everyone clear? You say aye, you agree to deny the application. Megan?
Nay.
Virginia?
Nay.
Will?
No hard feelings either way to anybody, Arthur, other commissioners. Nay.
Vote to deny?
Correct.
Okay.
You want to say yeah?
Then you want to
Yeah.
say yay, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, is what I meant. Yeah.
Okay. I know it's confusing. Eric
Nay.
and Jill, aye. So the motion does not carry with a vote of 3-2.
So does that mean that it is in the inverse approved?
Do we need to have another motion to vote it to approve?
It
It's a
helps
double
the
negative.
record so
It does help the
much
record,
if,
yeah.
if the commission can now do the reverse and actually make the motion to find
Okay.
the fact and move on to approval. It is much, much better. Thank you.
Thank you for that guidance. All right. So then can I call for a motion for a second finding of fact?
Jill, is it too late for conditions now that we know what direction we're going?
I think there's an opportunity for discussion after this
Sure.
next motion.
So the only thing I would ask is that you work with staff to remove the existing new trim you will put around the window so that the doors can sit as flush as they can against that exterior wall. Because if you look at the old picture before of the original doors in place, it sat in about an inch or so. So now they're going to sit out an inch and a quarter or whatever you said. So anything you can do to flatten where they're going to go will help it look more like it used to. Just my opinion, but if anyone else agrees with that, and we could put that as a condition or
Right.
I think
fine,
that
if not,
sounds
fine.
just-
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
that sounds good.
Do you understand the request, Arthur?
Yeah, I think I did. I just wanted to get clarification. So Will, you're saying to treat the trim or modify the trim as much as possible, as much as we could possibly recess the doors. Yeah, currently the window trim now is I think nil as far as protruding forward. But I think that's what you're saying, to make sure that we condition it or treat it such that the doors can be as near to being recessed as possible, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's
that what you
right. So
meant?
it looks like around the new work that was done, there's maybe an inch by 8-inch trim around those windows. So if that could come away and the doors could just go directly onto the siding, you'd be 1 inch less protruding than if you just put them on top of the trim around the windows. But just, I was just saying, work with staff to try to do that. If your carpenter gets in there and that doesn't work for some reason, just work with staff.
Yeah, a condition that I would suggest would have to do with waterproofing, to just take all measures to make sure that it's well sealed and waterproofed to prevent any future damage and continue to maintain it.
Understood. And I would certainly accept that condition. I know I'm not in a position to sort of push back, but yes, I would accept that condition.
Is that both of them, Megan's and mine, or just Megan's?
Oh, well, yours was about having minimal protrusion, and Megan's is about making sure that we accede to the waterproofing going forward so that we don't have these doors affixed to the outside, which then rot.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would, of course, I would accept both those conditions, which would be to my benefit as well, to maintain the integrity and the appearance. Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. So I've asked for another finding of fact. Are one of our former nays prepared to make a motion of a finding of fact
I can do it, or Virginia can do it.
with these approvals, or Eric?
Get my
Go
big
ahead,
book
Megan.
out.
Okay.
Okay, Megan.
I
The
move that
attorney to do it.
I move that we find as a fact that the Axel Bank application, Axel Bank or Axel Rod, Axel Bank application
Bank.
is in keeping with the overall character of the historic district and complies with all the relevant standards of evaluation based on our discussion of the application and the standards of evaluation in section 3.12.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance, because the plans are consistent with desired guidelines, exterior walls and windows and doors.
All right. So all in favor of approving this application will come to those conditions will be specified in the next portion of the motion, Dr. Axelbank. So all in favor of this motion indicate by stating aye when I call your name. Megan?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second.
Oh, was there a second? I'm sorry. Who was the second? Thank you, Margaret.
I'll be the second.
Thank you, Virginia. Now we get to vote. Okay. All in favor of accepting this application indicate by stating aye when I call your name. Eric?
Aye.
Will?
Nay.
Virginia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Jill? Nay. So.
We're consistent, aren't we?
Didn't sway anyone.
No. All right, then we need to move on with the conditions. Megan, would you like to continue?
Sure, I move to approve the application as modified with the following conditions. First, the applicant will work with staff to minimize the protrusion of the door by removing, if possible, the trim around the window, or just taking any possible measures to make sure it doesn't stick out too far. And the second is that the applicant will also take all measures to thoroughly seal and waterproof around the doors to make sure that there isn't any future water damage that would affect the integrity of the windows or the siding or the doors themselves. And the applicant will continue to maintain those features so that there's no damage in the future.
All right, is there a second?
So, I mean, I'm sorry, Jill. So
Go ahead.
take all measures necessary, but I don't know if that I could guarantee that there'll never be any damage. Can we say minimize damage
reasonable.
as opposed
Yeah.
to having, I mean, this is-
Reasonable measures to minimize damage as much as possible,
minimize it.
to the extent
That's great.
possible.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Eric, thank you. All right, roll call vote, please. All in favor of approving the application as modified? Megan?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Will?
Nay.
Eric?
Aye.
Jill? Nay. This motion carries 3-2. All right. Thank you very much, Arthur.
Thank you. I
Move
appreciate
forward.
the work, and
Justin will be back next week and he'll work with you regarding these requirements.
I appreciate the hard work that was into this. I especially appreciate Margaret.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you.
We all appreciate Margaret too. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. All right. With that, we move to our third application of the evening.
Do I need to be brought, sorry to interrupt, do I need to be brought back in?
You are brought back in, but we don't have to have a motion for that, do we?
Cool.
No. So we just note for the record that Max is brought back in. Don't see you, Max, but your name's there.
Trying to cut down on the bandwidth.
Okay, I
Oh.
hear you. Okay, so we also have a couple of other new attendees at the meeting at this point, and I'll come to them in just a moment. I need to swear you in, but first I have a couple other housekeeping items to work through, okay? This is an application for the certificate of appropriateness at 114 North Okonichi Street. The applicant is Jennifer Hoffman on behalf of Candace and Hans Savage to demolish an existing patio, to replace a single window on the rear wall of the existing covered porch with a double window, and to construct a new 132 square foot screened porch at 114 Okonichi Street. I believe it would be more so much a new one as a kind of a revision of what you have, an addition and a screening in of what you have.
Correct.
So, okay, with that, you guys, we need to open the public hearing. Guys, I need a motion, come on.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Thank
Second.
you, Will, thank you. To our new applicants, if you haven't heard, we need to do a roll call vote because of the Zoom meeting. So we will, each vote we'll work through the roster of names here. So all in favor of opening the public hearing, indicate by saying aye. Megan?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Aye. Max?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Public hearing is open with a vote of 6-0. Are all members familiar with this application? If you are not familiar with this application, please indicate by raising your hand at this time. All commissioners are familiar. Are there any known or potential conflicts of interest or bias with respect to this application? Please indicate by raising your hand at this time.
Do you have your camera on?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, so there's no conflict of interest, and I want to, before I forget, I would like to swear in our new attendees. I don't see your names on your screen, so if you will introduce yourself to me first.
Sure.
Okay, Sharon.
Well, I'm Jennifer Hoffman.
Okay. There's a gentleman with a headset on.
Oh, my name is Hans van der Weijden. My wife is Candace Savage, and we own 114 North Okonichi Street.
All right. So Hans, Candace, and Jennifer, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the information that you're about to give us in this hearing is true and factual?
Yes.
Okay, I heard 3 clearly audible yeses.
Good.
Right. So, Margaret, would you like to give us a staff report?
Sure. You summarized the application well for the demolition of a small building and then the creation of, or patio, I'm sorry, and the replacement of a window and creation of some additional porch, screen porch area. The relevant guidelines are for porches, entrances, and balconies, site features and plantings, windows and doors, and additions to existing buildings. The application is complete and the materials all seem to meet the guidelines. When we get into the details, we can talk about the window material. And we didn't have anybody request to participate. I believe there's some public watching that was just curious about the application that didn't want to speak, so they haven't come into the meeting.
Okay.
And I think that pretty much covers it. I have if the photos or the plans are useful as we get a little further along, I can pull those up and share those.
Yeah, we'll want to share those. In fact, you may want to do that now. In the meantime, I'll ask Jennifer, Hans, or Candace if there's anything that they would like to share with the commissioners at this time. If not, we'll open it up to questions and ask for your responses as we work through the application.
I'm happy for you guys to just open it up to discussion. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think the most helpful, let me do this in sort of two stages, commissioners. Let's talk about the demolition of this patio, I don't know what to call it, this wood patio that's detached from the house.
This is like
And
a
then
platform.
we'll move into the revisions to the structure of the house, the addition of the space for the porch, the screening, et cetera, the window. So let's just talk about that. Are there any questions or concerns about the removal of this deck, patio? I don't know what to call it. I can't see everybody, so I'm scrolling. I don't hear any questions regarding that demolition piece. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it never was part of the house. It's just a bunch of boards that supported an outdoor, an above ground pool, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
It was placed there by the last owner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's not old.
Okay. All right. Then with that, I think it's probably easiest if we move into some of the elevations, Margaret, which are more than the photos.
See there, you could see the platform clearly.
Yeah, and there we can.
It never was part of the house or anything.
Okay. So this is the proposed addition with screenings. Are there any questions regarding this portion of the application?
I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but just let me know.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
In the photos of the house, the window and the narrative, the windows are 1/1. The doors are multi-light. You're proposing a double window there to the right of the door. Yeah, that right there. Thank you, Margaret. I don't have to try to find a way to say that. And in the elevations, the 3D elevations, those windows are multi-light. That double window is multi-light.
Correct. And that honestly is a function of our drafting program that pops those in there, but they would be consistent with what is there. You'll see that there are multi-lights shown in all the existing windows.
Yes, that was some of my, those were my next questions. So will that double window be 1/1 to be consistent with the rest of the windows in the home?
Yes, that's what I would recommend.
That's what I would recommend. So there's quite a bit of narrative both in our staff report and elsewhere that those are multi-pane, single divided light windows. So we want to clarify that the single 1/1 window would be made a double 1/1 window.
Yes, I concur.
And then if you keep going, Margaret, there's a 3-dimensional elevation where
nice.
I can find it. Yes, maybe one more. I know I saw right there.
I wish everybody would give us those.
Yes. In the bottom right picture, what I think is a door on the floor plans now appears to be a window here in this wall with the lap siding. That remains a door. Is that correct?
Well, let's see here. Let me double check with you. There is no plan to alter that existing door. And it's a mystery to me why it is showing that way, because that's an interior view. Why would that be showing? Because in the plan view, it shows as a door.
Yeah, in all other views, it shows as a door. And I just, sometimes, I'm not sure which view is the dominant view. So just
Well,
wanted to clarify.
we
The door is still a
were,
door.
yeah, I was there today and it's still a door.
All
It's still a
right.
door. I was just about to say, did I forget something? Is that a door in a window?
No, that's a door.
So it's going to
Okay.
stay a door.
So that's a clarification that helps me as well. And then these screen doors, they're going to be multi-light screen doors?
You know, I'll tell you that when we're using our drafting program, I would say that we have a lot of placeholder standard things in our drafting programs, and it's so apologies if there's something that's inconsistent.
I just am not familiar with ever seeing a multi-light screen door.
Yeah, no, that probably is a function of my drafting assistant putting in a standard door in place of a screen door.
Okay.
So that would be a screen door, and Candace and Hans have not specified. We haven't gotten into details of the style of screen door, but I would suggest just your sort of classic screen door for a historic home.
Definitely.
So
Yeah,
a rail across the middle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually there's a
Yeah.
rail somewhat similar to the railing of the screens themselves. And
And sometimes there's some detailing below that middle rail.
yes. And I think any of those standard screen doors would be acceptable
Okay.
within our guidelines and that I've seen. I think anything particularly.
Are these two screen doors different sizes? They look like they are.
No, that's just the 3D view that's distorting them a little bit. They're the same. They're both 6'8" doors.
Thank you. And the width is the same?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was puzzling over that earlier, so thank you for clearing it up.
Sure. They're both 3-foot doors.
All right, then. Are there other questions from the members of the commission with respect to this application?
No.
No. So with that, it sounds to me like there's no concerns that this application does not meet our guidelines. With respect to porches, entrances and balconies, site features, plantings, windows and doors, and additions to existing buildings, as modified to clarify that all windows on the home are 1/1, and the double window will be 2 1/1 windows. That this drawing, which shows interior view new construction as the door changing to a window, is in error and the door remains, and that the screen doors will be traditional screen doors, not multi-light screen doors. Did I miss anything?
No, I think as far as we're concerned, that is the way it should be.
Okay. With that, do we have a motion for a finding of fact?
We have to close the public
We have
hearing.
to close the public hearing. Thank you.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Megan.
I'll second it.
Virginia. All right. Then I need to call for a roll call vote. Will, all in favor of closing public hearing, say aye. Will? I think I saw a verbal aye. I didn't hear it. Yes. Eric?
Aye.
Max?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Okay.
Jill, I guess I just, we haven't really had any discussion on this, so I'll just say quickly for the record, the reasons why I think this is in keeping with the guidelines. It's because I don't consider this to be a character defining elevation. It's in the back of the house. You can't see it from the street. That little patio I wouldn't call it a patio, is not part of the historic character of the home. And I just don't think that these changes affect the historic character of any features.
All right. Thank you for that. Are we ready for a motion of a finding of fact? Someone? It's an easy one.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you, Virginia.
I just might need some help with the guidelines.
Okay.
Okay. I move that we find as a fact that the 114, is that what it is?
Yes,
Okonichi.
114 North Okonichi.
Application is in keeping with the overall character of the historic district and complies with all relevant standards of evaluation based on our discussion of the application and the standards of evaluation in section 3.12.3 of the Unified Development Ordinance, because the plans are consistent with design guidelines.
You want me to call them out for you?
Yes, please.
Porches, entrances, and balconies, site features and plantings, windows and doors, additions to existing buildings.
Thank you. Okay, so we vote here, is that right?
We need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Megan. And then we're going to do a roll call vote. So Virginia?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Max?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. And then Virginia, if you'll clarify the modifications, they're really clarifications, but I want to be sure they're documented.
I move to approve the application as submitted with the following for clarification's sake. That the 2 screen doors will be traditional screen doors rather than multi-light doors. That the new window will be a pair of 1/1 windows. Is that right?
That's correct.
And what else?
And that the door, I don't know if we need to document this or not, but the 2 doors leading to the screen porch from the house remain as doors.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Did that make it onto the tape, I hope?
We'll clean it up in the minutes, but that's all I'm saying.
Okay, clean it up later. Okay.
Margaret.
Just for clarity's sake, because Justin's staff report makes reference to the windows being SDL, that is not the case. And so there's not a need to discuss that the muttons are appropriately on the exterior and interior, just because the staff report is part of the record.
Okay.
It's not relevant. These are 1/1 windows, and therefore that note is not relevant.
There's no DL. That's right.
No DL.
Right. So all windows in the home are 1/1, and these new windows are consistent with that. And the architectural drawings inaccurately portrayed them as multi-pane.
Okay. So is it time to vote again?
I am lost. No, we need a second, I think.
Second.
What was that, Eric? Thank you. All right, now we have a roll call vote. So all in favor of the motion to approve with the following clarifications that were articulated by Virginia. Megan.
Aye.
Virginia.
Aye.
Will.
Aye.
Max. Can't see you, Max. Can't hear you. Thank you. Eric.
Aye.
Jill. Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Yay.
Thank you. Congratulations and good luck with your project.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Enjoy your porch.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Whew. Okay. So then I would just like to take a few more minutes this evening to get, if you will, at least a temperature check or some thoughts from the commission about the materials that I sent out. I believe it was Monday. We're working with a very good group as our consultants on these guidelines. And because they had been told that we're going from design guidelines to design standards, which is consistent with the new language passed by the state, they were trying to understand exactly what we meant when we said standards. They actually thought we'd already had a conversation about this, and therefore we could tell them what we meant by that. But of course, we really haven't. So what I provided to you was a mock-up of kind of a tentative way they would improve our current guidelines to move them into a more clear, consistent, and perhaps allow us to make more defensible decisions. But this write-up would fall short of what a design standard, as they in their professional opinion would say. And they provided an example of what a design standard looks like from Fort Collins. They provided how the template is organized, and they provided sort of an example of what a standard for a commercial building might read like from Fort Collins, etc. And what I need to hear from some of you guys as they continue to prepare some drafts for us to review is, where do we want to be on this continuum, if you will? We have a very diverse district. We can certainly tighten up language as they suggest, moving away where possible from the words avoid to, don't do it. But, standard is still more, I want to say rigorous. When I use that word, I don't mean to say more stringent, but it's just a much more rigorous language. Y'all have any thoughts from what you saw?
Hey Jill, it's Will.
Mm-hmm.
I like the new standards that you proposed. I'm kind of a little more used to working with something, a few more shalls and thous than it would be nice, and that'd be cool. So I think it's moving in the right direction personally, and thanks for your work on it.
Well, this is not, let me just clarify, this is not my work at all.
So thanks for
herding
the cats and doing the
and I'm just
initiative.
relaying a question from them about how to, how to craft this language. I think we did give them feedback that on this mock-up of a commercial building one that, actually they proposed that items like number 5 and number 6, which get a bit paragraphy, that they would sort of break those out into bullets and make them shorter, more succinct action statements, so that it's we want to try to improve the readability of this document so people can see clearly what requirements are. So I think they're going to work on an iteration with that. But if you look at the Fort Collins standards, I like one of the things I like about Fort Collins, that the standard there is it has like a statement of intent up front, like this is what we're trying to achieve with this this guideline, and I think that's helpful.
Well, and there'll be a final review by us and a final legal review of this.
Yeah, but they
I'm worried
need to
that-
know right now is, do we want to go to something much more in the format of the Fort Collins, or are we comfortable more with the improving the standard and language of the, in the other example that they sent, which was based on our current guidelines. Maybe y'all didn't have time with the applications this week to take a look at this, and that's fine. Just let me know.
No, I'm sorry. I looked at your email. I didn't realize there was two choices. I thought I really have, or the new example.
No, the example is their improvement of what we already have, which if you were to look at that 2-page document and compare it to our current commercial building guidelines, you'll see that I think it's stronger. It's moving in the right direction to help us with our evaluations and decisions. But it doesn't go as far as perhaps as a standard.
I kind of like the standardy language with shalls. I mean, you probably know that about me already. I think it's important for us to remember what we're doing, which is we're applying the facts to the standards, and we're not making up standards. The standards that we have are the ones that the town has come up with and the town board has approved, and our job is to look at them and apply them to that specific scenario. And I think to the extent that we can have very clear ones that say you can't do this, you can do that, or whatever, I think that's really helpful. But that's just my personal take. And I guess the other thing I would say, I don't know how much, so the word, I think we're supposed to be using the word standards now, right? With the new law.
We're supposed to be using the word standards, but there's no real guidance on what
that is.
And yes.
It is a standard, yeah.
Yeah. We're using the word standard, which is what prompted them to ask the question, because in Fort Collins, and in their professional experience, a design standard looks a bit different from ours. Will be called design standards, but they're not quite the same structure or layout as that Fort Collins example. Am I clear? Are you clear on what I'm saying?
I think so. I think the layout on the Fort Collins looks way too brochure-y and namby-pamby. Not like a standard at all.
But it is the standard. That is what a standard looks like.
Hey, it's Colorado. What are you going to do? I don't know.
I mean, I think that the important, it has those elements. And one of the things that I personally really liked, and I don't think you have to go to that format to get it, is I like that statement of intent.
Mm-hmm.
I like it being very clear what this whole guideline is intending to do. And it's not buried in a narrative. It's just there, intent.
I've often noticed that the narrative paragraph that begins the sections, each section of our guidelines will have a good sized paragraph. And there's plenty of information in there that is not called out and numbered as a guideline. So, right. And I think, I always regard it as applicable as the numbered guidelines.
Well, and Margaret, I think with some of the conversations Justin and I have had about that, because I raised that question as well, sometimes we have pulled out that information in the front to cite, and that's really not what we're supposed to cite. So if there's something in there that we see that we are needing to articulate as our rationale, we need to move it into a numbered guideline and be sure we have expressed it as such. It's really meant to be an informative area. And I think as it's been rewritten for commercial buildings as just one example, it's much more that. It's just much more a background and informative paragraphs. I'm not saying that that's one of the ones that needed it, but.
So I'm sorry, it's late and I'm kind of
I know
tonight, but so the direction you need from us is if we want to go with design standards or design guidelines, and then
we have to use the language design standards. That's what we're writing. The guidance I need from you is whether you're comfortable with something that looks like, and this is going to be true across all the elements that we have in our guidelines, something that looks like the 2-page commercial document building page that I showed you, or do you want something that's much more, it's a bit stricter in the Fort Collins standard language?
Yeah, I think it's like how permissive do we want them to be? And when it says in the draft that we have for the Hillsborough draft, where it says avoid doing blah, blah, I guess we need to understand, well, in what scenarios would we allow that to, I mean, what would we take into consideration to figure out, oh, it can't possibly avoid it, so we'll prove it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
in
saying?
a diverse, how many times, because I will, perhaps like yourself, I came from a regulated industry and I lived under SOPs day in and day out. That's all I did. So, how many times do you think is avoid the right as stringent as you go, because we have a very diverse district, and at times we know there's going to be situations where we want it avoided, but we know we might have to allow it because of the diversity of the structures in our district. So as we read these guidelines that come through, sometimes we're going to be saying shall not, and sometimes we're going to be saying avoid. There's both in this guideline that they wrote.
Is there another way to do it though? Could you have the more restrictive language, the shall nots and the do nots, and then have some section on exceptions or exemptions, like reasons why it may be impossible, or I don't know, rather than bake the permissiveness into the standard itself?
Well,
I think ask about legal review, because if we go fully shalls and thous, we could box ourselves into making someone do something ridiculous. And, I hate to do that to people.
Right.
I would like some kind of escape hatch, like Megan's mentioning, so we don't have to march down a crazy road.
Right. I agree. And I think if that's your sense, then I think the way this 2-page thing is written, because it's very, you repair, you do this, you repair this, you restore this, you avoid obscuring these things. You can change avoid, we can go through it, and when we see final drafts, and change avoids to shall nots where we think we should. But I don't know that there's a way that we can write these and then write what the exceptional and define the exceptional circumstances. I just haven't seen that in any of the examples that I've looked for.
Yeah, like if it's not possible, or if it's not feasible.
Yeah,
or
with
if it's not
SOPs, we used to do that. If you couldn't follow this SOP, you went through the chain of command and you wrote a rationale, and someone approved that for you, and you were able to do that. You had a documentation. But I don't know where we would go with that.
Well, I think it's important for us to be able to use our judgment from time to time, because these buildings are all really variable. The situations, the requests that are coming to us vary a lot. I don't know. I'm not sure that I'll be able to follow it to the very letter of the law. I guess I know that's what I'm supposed to do, and I try really hard, but sometimes I can't do it, especially living in this crazy house that I live in. I know what it's like. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I have concerns about tightening up the language.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
I think we should think about too is we've probably been through one of the biggest new build and renovation booms of the last 100 years, and we've gotten where we wanted to get with the softer language and the gentler language. So it's kind of working. Do we need to be stricter?
I guess one thing I worry about is that as the market continues to boom, Hillsborough will continue to gentrify, and we'll start seeing requests for larger additions or bigger changes, higher price projects. And
I don't think there are any empty lots left. I think Mr. Knight has
Dustin
bought
said
them
there's
all.
12. He said there's 12
Right.
lots left.
People are going to want to tear down houses like the one last month, and people are going to want to make big additions to existing homes. So there's sort of like I don't know.
And I agree. I think we are committed. We are committed to strengthening the language than what we've had, because our current language doesn't allow us to always make defensible decisions, consistent defensible decisions. And that's really where we have to get to. So I think we are going to be tightening up the language. The degree is, the question is to what degree, to how much. And I hear some folks, Max, I can't see Eric or Max. If you have any comments, please weigh in.
I think there's the middle ground between having it be so heavy-handed and having it be too loosey-goosey. And I think that part of it is up to the interpretation of the committee as well, and how we phrase things in reference to those guidelines and how we utilize those guidelines. Because even something that we might consider a little bit loose right now, we've been able to use to good effect in meetings, and it's been defensible as well. So I think it just sort of takes a skilled position for the committee members as well.
Okay.
We just have to cite the standards out loud in the meeting.
Eric, any thoughts?
I think I'm very much in agreement with Max. I do think there's a good middle ground where we can have very strong language, but also leave it open to, a fair amount of interpretation so that we can continue to make, the best possible choice for each individual circumstances, instead of just, rubber stamping things based on like, you can't do this, you can do that.
My feeling is we can interpret it, but we don't want them to interpret it. Sorry.
Yeah,
That sounds terrible.
That's fair. No, that's.
I think I have like the opposite concern, where I think it's really important for us to apply the guidelines fairly to people in the community. And in order to do that, we need to make sure they're not so ambiguous that we're interpreting them anew with every application. It should be, we're applying this guideline the same to this property as we do to that property, and so that the community can look at those guidelines and know exactly what to expect even before they come before us. They know, okay, we need to do this or that. I just think it's important to be fair that way.
Yeah, and this would be responsive to the public comments I quickly skimmed that people call us out for being arbitrary sometimes, and so this could tighten that up. And we want to be responsive to what the public wants to in those comments.
Yeah, I think we get a lot of just with the evolution of the board over time. It's just kind of, that's partly a factor of the membership. It's partly a factor of evolving thinking, that develops over time. It just thoughts about historic preservation have changed a lot in 20 years since our guidelines were last written. But
I still want the preamble to say we're so much less strict than an HOA. So if you think we're crazy, we live in a subdivision.
Seriously.
Yeah. Margaret, do you have any thoughts as staff that you'd like to share with us, or our lawyer representation tonight? Would you like to things that you think we should be thinking about?
I think you've hit the topics that concerned me, is that it is a very diverse district. It is not one that is one architectural style or period. And I think you're headed in the right direction to kind of be careful to tighten it up in some ways, but not convert everything to a thou shalt or thou shalt not, because you can always run into a circumstance where it's not going to work. So I've actually enjoyed this couple minutes of conversation. I think you guys are headed in exactly the right direction. So well done.
Yay.
Yeah, without an avenue to appropriately accept the shall not language, I think you just hang yourself with it. in many spaces, because you just can't anticipate, because let's face it, it was 20 years since the last update. Could be a long time before we get it again. So we use shall not when we can, but it may be sparingly.
Yeah, could you ask the consultant if there are any sort of like escape hatch language they've seen in other guidelines?
You really
And then not just
shall not.
CYAs,
You really
but
was that shall not.
Yeah, not the CYAs, but to protect the community from us having to go down to do something silly.
Yeah. Does our legal representation this evening want to share anything for our consideration?
I spoke with Bob about this briefly. I mean, I think a lot of what you all have discussed should be, geared towards the consultant since he's primarily involved. Bob did have some recommendations as he's been going through updating the UDO with 160D and as well as some other language in the guidelines. And I know he's been working with staff, but I kind of want to echo what Margaret pointed out and what everybody else on the commission has pointed out too, where it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in the fact that if you have a lot of shall language, it's black and white. However, it doesn't leave much flexibility. One comment I have too about sort of the exception route, and again, the consultant might be able to give you guys a little bit more guidance, but sometimes that can get a little bit tough because then where do you end your list, right? I mean, do you have to list every possible exception? You might leave some out. Is it an exhaustive list? That type of thing. So I think they will be able to provide you all some guidance, but everybody is sort of hitting the head on the nail of sort of balancing that out between those, two ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it could be like, unless it's impossible or not feasible, you blah, 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 shall not, blah. I don't know.
Yeah,
but we have some of that technically feasible language now, and it's kind of icky.
Well, yeah.
Who decides what's technically feasible or not? It's
unfortunately you all do, and again that goes back to interpretation, right? So,
I don't know that the escape hatch like that helps us much because we already have language and guidelines that says
but it's the same thing as saying avoid, right? Like, well, when can't you avoid something?
Yeah.
Well, when it's not feasible, I guess, or when it's impossible. Or
yeah. So, and that's part of the reason why I like sort of the statement of intent that's really the only thing that I liked out of that. Well, I didn't mind that Fort Collins standard, but it does take me to the place that you're working in a district that's all very architecturally harmonious. And what you're talking about allowing and not allowing is a lot easier because all your buildings are kind of the same. And so you're clear about what you're willing to allow people to do. We have such diversity, and we've over time have allowed such a wide ranging number of things that's what I think really sometimes confuses the public a lot, is they look around and they see certain things that were allowed and they think they're doing something consistent with that.
Right.
A later board thinks it's not, and it's very difficult to articulate the reasons for that. Anyway, but I like the intent because the intent sort of really focuses you in a couple sentences that really this whole thing is about holding this building in a good architectural integrity that it has always had and not compromising that, so to speak. And therefore read these guidelines, which all speak to that intent. And then avoid starts to take on a different emphasis to me, Megan, because then you understand why you're avoiding those things, because they don't meet your intent. So,
but we also have to, in some portion of these guidelines, to remind ourselves and to educate the public that our town wasn't built all in the same era. In fact, there are lots of houses like mine that were built a little bit here and a little bit there. And so you got your Victorian, you got your Georgian, you got your piece of crap World War II. And so it's really hard to say you must make sure your house is in the style of blank. It sounds like in Fort Collins, that might be a little bit easier.
Well, in this district and within Fort Collins, okay. I think I have the information that helps me feed back to them, so that they're going to develop, which way to kind of move, and that seems to be with improvement of the language of the sort of the 2-page standard with sort of the introduction part, and then a list of 8 or 10 or 12 statements like we have now, rather than this structured template language, that more templated language of standards that I shared with you. That's what I'm hearing as a consensus. Strengthen it, but still allow appropriate flexibility, and we'll be looking at all this language soon. Okay.
Good.
All right. Next time, I would like you to think about what phrases you would use to define the special character of our district. If you had to write a paragraph that said, the special character of our district, the thing which we have to assess everything against, does not detract from the special character of the Hillsborough Historic, what would that be? Because we do not articulate that now in our document, and we will need to articulate that very clearly. So be thinking about what that is for you.
So is that going to be on the exam?
It's going to be on the exam next week. It's an essay question. It's not a multiple choice, by the way. So
bring your number 2 pencils.
Yeah, really.
And your little blue book, if you're old enough to remember when you did that.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's something too that they can't define that for us. We have to define that. So, and we have nothing.
Oh, we can do that.
Good. Hopefully, I've asked Justin to see if he can shorten the list of applications a bit, without compromising community responsiveness, to give us some time for some of these discussions moving forward.
Is this kind of discussion about the standards, does this need to be in a public hearing? Or can we just...
I don't think so.
Not in a public hearing, but a public meeting.
Okay.
Public meeting, but not a hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Jill, I don't know if you remembered to mention the white signs to Justin, but we were going to maybe talk about that tonight.
I did, and I did tell him to do that, and he didn't put that on the agenda, and I completely forgot it without it being on the updates.
Well, we could talk about it next month, because since Candace and Max aren't here, would that be better?
What
would it be better to talk about it next month, since Candace and Max are not on the...
It's really kind of up to what you think downstream timeline needs to be.
Okay, well, I'll just give a real brief explanation for, I don't know, I guess maybe Virginia and Eric are maybe the only people we haven't looped in on this. So one of the ideas that came to us in our efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion was to collaborate with other Hillsborough groups on the white signs. And I've spoken more with the Alliance and the participating groups in that on what their ideas were. And the idea so far is that the Alliance would sort of convene a kind of like independent committee with representatives from the museum, the Burwell School, the HDC if we decide to participate, and maybe the Alliance as well. And then also just sort of at-large members of the community. And this group would meet a couple of times, or Virginia, you might have been at the Alliance meeting that we
Was.
talked about that. So Eric might be the only person. The committee would meet maybe twice a year, and they would consider applications from community members for white signs. And the idea is that the Alliance would do a fundraising effort to so that the Alliance could fund the signs. And we were hopeful that we could, that the program would be for community members who maybe have properties that have not historically been recognized as historically significant or valuable. I know there are some homes that were identified in the book that the Alliance is working on that have been mentioned that they would be good candidates. And so anyway, it would just be a way for us to get started in this initiative, sort of meet with members of the community, promote historic preservation. And so we've been trying to think about what each group's kind of contributing role could be. And the HDC, one of our roles could just be providing information about the properties, kind of helping with the research and the fact checking. But then also, we could perform some outreach, and that could be a way for us to, get more involved with the community members and kind of tell people who we are, what we do, and sort of just get more people involved in historic preservation. So,
well, the HCC did ask and received an expanded inventory of historic houses that went into other neighborhoods besides just the historic district. I'm pretty sure. Do you guys remember that? Anybody? Okay.
Yeah, we had a survey.
Yeah. So there's one that includes West Hillsborough and maybe, I can't say it, the neighborhood that's right north of Cornelia Street where the big park is. Oh, God. Fairview. Thank you. Oh.
Yeah, so that was something that someone mentioned was, signs could go outside the district and so sort of expand the, sort of that, the recognition of.
So at least the inventory exists.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess what we would just wanted to talk about tonight was how people felt about this, us HCC getting involved in this. And, if anyone wants to participate, please let me know, because the Alliance is going to try to schedule a meeting, just sort of like a preliminary meeting to try to make some plans before we try to, figure out how to go about, getting at-large members and try to set up some parameters around the applications and how the committee would consider the, which homes should receive signs and get funding for them. Does that sound like a good idea? We're all right with it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you guys want to get involved, let me know and I can forward you the meeting info.
Okay.
Amazing. Okay.
Well, y'all, I'm down to 5% on my computer.
Okay. And it's approaching 9 o'clock. Is there any other business that we have for this evening, or do we want to have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Megan. Eric, was that a second?
Yep.
All right, last roll call vote of the night, guys. All in favor of adjourning? Megan?
Aye.
Will?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Jill? Aye. The motion carries 5-0. Good night, everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Brady. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks everyone for having me.
listening.